get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you on a beautiful evening, putting a pin in 2016. And what a year it was here behind enemy lines. You heard last week, hopefully, you heard our first edition of our Best of 2016. Time for our second show. Couldn't limit it to one show. Had to do it in two, because we had so much great content this year, so many great interviews, so many great times, whether it be traveling to CPAC, whether it be going to fairs, holding their feet to the fire, as I'm getting alerts on my phone about other things going on in news today. Faith and, hold their feet to the fire by fair and going to Family Research Center's Value Voters Summit, all those great things that we do here on the show, and all the great people we get to talk to. And we bring you even more of the best of 2016 on this show. Before we get to that, though, just want to say that if you are following Behind Enemy Lines Radio's Buffoon of the Year contest, we're at the finals, guys. We're right there. It's time to pick the Buffoon of the Year. Who you got, America? We're down to Donna Brazile or Anthony Weiner. That's who you voted for. That's who's in the finals. Now it's time to tell me who you got. And when you're deciding who you got, please remember that Amanda Kohut, one of our regular contributors here on the show, will probably hunt you down and get you if you don't vote for Anthony Weiner. If you've seen her on social media, you'll see that she is very much in favor of getting Anthony Weiner that elusive BOTY victory he's been so close to for the past couple of years. So if you want to know how to vote, go to www.behindenemylinesradio.us and check out the latest article about Buffoon of the Year. The poll is right there in the article. You're voting for Buffoon of the Year, and there's also a third place buffoon who's third rate. Is it Colin Kaepernick or the Huffington Post? Check our archives, and you'll be able to see how and why each nominee was nominated, and you can go there and vote for the winners. Tell us who you got, and we'll announce the winner in our first show of the year next week. I believe it's going to be January 3rd is that show, so check it out then and find out who won and who will be reigning as Buffoon of the Year. I know I have my favorite, and I'm hoping you have yours, and you let us know who it is, and we all get together in the new year and we celebrate the biggest buffoon of 2016. But right now, while you're mulling that over, and you're hopefully checking out www.behindenemylinesradio.us, take a listen to this interview we did. It was probably one of the most important interviews we did. You're not going to find, my favorite interviews are not the famous people, although we get a lot of famous people on the show. My favorite interviews are the everyday Americans looking to make a difference. And that's what we found with our friend Andrew Marr and Chase Rowan from Warrior Angels Foundation. They became a group close to my heart this year, and this was the first interview we did back at CPAC. Take a listen to it right now.
Andrew, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
We've been having a lot of fun, Shaun. Shaun Adkins is going to remain with us, the author of Squashing Liberalism.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
We have. We've had a lot of fun, but you know what? I don't. I'm going to say this, and this is from a Marine veteran to you guys, because I know what you guys do. I don't even feel worthy to sit here.
You're worthy.
Well, I know that, but I just want to say what you guys do. You not just your service to the country, but your continued service. I always say that because so many times I'm sure you guys are fed these accolades. Oh, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. But people forget the continued service after our military service that takes place. That's just as important, sometimes more important, especially with what you guys are doing.
It's about contribution, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely.
Well, let's fill in the audience about what exactly we're talking about here. Andrew Marr, the CEO and founder of the Warrior Angels Foundation, Special Forces Green Beret, started the organization with the sole purpose to stop the deaths of veterans suffering from PTSD symptoms. We talked about this on the show a few times before. We actually have friends who are veterans that suffer from PTSD. It's such an underreported issue, but it's so important to talk about because it's in the shadows and because there are so many people suffering alone from PTSD.
Absolutely. Let me give a little background story. Like you said, I was 9 years in Special Forces, and I want to caveat that with, this story is not special to me. This is the story of a number of our veterans, and that's why we're voicing the opinion, so they can know about it. Can you guys hear me all right?
Oh, yeah, we hear you just fine. You're doing
Fantastic.
great.
So, 9 years in Special Forces. I dealt mostly in explosives. I was explosive breacher. So that means we put a surgical charge on a denied point of entry to try to get inside to a bad guy.
Right.
So I was in and around countless explosions for my career. Fast forward after my third deployment, again, as an elite performer in life and death situations. Coming home 6 months after that, I wake up. I'm on 13 different medications. I'm an alcoholic. My wife is 9 months pregnant with our 5th child, and her only request of me for that day was if I could just keep my drinking down in case she went to labor. Wow. And she didn't have to drive herself to the hospital.
Wow.
You know, at that time, I was like, how did I get here? You know what I mean?
Right.
This is not the man I was.
Yep.
And I came to a crossroads, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to quit kicking against external circumstances, and we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to find a different alternative way to treat this than all of the antidepressants, anti-anxieties, psychotropics, narcotics, opiates, and everything else I was on. And that's how we kind of got started.
It's an amazing story, and the road you've taken is incredible. So many people don't make it down that road. Chase Road also with us, the community relationship for Warrior Angels. Chase, tell us your story about how you got involved. You're in Special Forces, Army Ranger. Thank you doesn't say enough for everything that you guys have done. But tell us your story of the road that you've taken to get to this table today.
Yeah, well, in 2003, I decided to join the military. Of course, 9/11 was my main reasoning for that. I was a part of 3rd Ranger Battalion out of Fort Benning, Georgia. Deployed to northern Iraq in 2004. Shortly after returning from Iraq, before I was able to go to Ranger School, I suffered a parachute accident during a nighttime training operation. My parachute didn't open all the way, so I hit the ground going about 80 miles an hour.
Oh, man.
Caused a severe traumatic brain injury. That was then my way out of... They kind of said, hey, you can't do anything else with us, so we're going to medically discharge you out of the military. Shortly after being out, I started to notice, it was about a year and a half, started to notice a slow decline in just quality of life, my well-being, my marriage, in so many different areas, and I just kind of accepted it at the time. But then, fast forward, years later, Andrew got out of the military. And Andrew and I crossed paths. We've known each other a long time, and he was struggling with the same issues. So,
gathering together, working together,
yes, sir.
Working for a common purpose, keeping focus on that. Amanda, you got some questions, right?
Yes. So we're at CPAC, where we have thousands of people who I know would do anything to help out our veterans. And PTSD is often referred to as the invisible wound that is brought home from the war. And we don't have a lot of conversation about it. It's hard to identify it. What can we do to help identify those veterans who might be suffering, reach out to them and give them a hand?
Yeah, well, you know, that's a great question, and we need to talk about two things. We need to talk about traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, because they're interrelated often. And what we now know about traumatic brain injury, Shaun, is it's a two-phased injury. So the first part is that initial trauma, be it a blast wave, be it a acceleration, deceleration, blunt force trauma, like I said.
Something where the brain moves inside your skull, either side to side or front to back.
Initial, okay? The second, what you hit on is the silent part, and that's the post-traumatic inflammation, swelling of the brain. And that can happen a day, a week, a month, years later after the injury. So what we've identified is a specific group of hormones in the brain called neurosteroids that are responsible for making us who we are, responsible for our cognition, our behavior, our psychology, physiology, executive decision-making, all these things. And so when you have that swelling of the brain, the pituitary system can't work properly. That causes all these cascades of symptoms down the line. The current mechanism is to treat it with medication and psychotherapy, which doesn't work.
And when it's so clinically put out as you did, it sounds like it's obvious, but the symptoms, people can be asymptomatic of TBI and PTSD. Right. So much time, and inside the tissue is deteriorating, and things are happening internally that nobody sees.
Let me say something about that, because I'm dealing with this right now on a family level.
Yeah.
My dad's a Marine Corps veteran from Vietnam era, and he's told me stuff in the last 12 months that he's never told me in my whole life. I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
And that's something, he's thank God, he's seeking treatment right now. He's getting some help from the VA. And I'm going to ask you this, just brother to brother. What else can he do other than VA treatment and seeing a psychologist, talking about stuff like that? I know we talked about a lot of drugs and stuff like that.
This is what we're offering, Shaun.
Right.
We're offering an alternative that treats the underlying condition.
Okay.
We need to find out what his underlying condition is. And how do you do that? You do it with an objective blood test. test. How easy is that? Look for
sounds simple, yeah.
Specific group of hormones saying, "Oh my God, this guy's deficient in this. No wonder he has all these. All these problems."
So you're pinpointing it with an actual blood sample versus trying to crack the code in someone's mind. Right.
It's like hormone replacement therapy.
Exactly.
Is what it is.
Exactly. You're treating the underlying condition by doing a individualized, objective blood panel, and then you replenish what you're deficient in.
Right. So Chase, you're actually going through a lot of this, right?
Yes.
So why don't you explain to you the difference in when you first started the treatments and to where you are now?
Okay, well, I get funny face every time I say this, but when I started the treatment beforehand, my life was honestly at the bottom. And I had not quite realized it yet, hadn't accepted it, but I was drinking a lot. My kids weren't getting to see me as much. Well, then I start the treatment. We're talking 3 days. I wake up the third day, and the first thing I do is smile. Not even joking. And I hadn't done that. I hadn't wanted to face a day in over a year, well over a year. And then it hit me, and I just started getting teary, and I started thinking, I told my wife, I said, there's hundreds of thousands of guys like me, with kids, with a wife, with families that are out there struggling right now. And I was like, and who's going to help them? Nobody is. Nobody's wanting to do anything. Everybody's wanting to drug these guys up.
Because they're treating the symptoms, not the actual disease, is what's happening here.
Well, is the VA currently using the blood test?
No. The VA does not offer this treatment protocol, and we were fortunate enough to get lined up with the top neuroendocrinologist in the field of treating traumatic brain injuries out of California. And so here's what the VA does. They say, okay, this person's deficient in testosterone. They give him a testosterone. But here's the thing. There's precursors to testosterone, things that are responsible for making it upstream. And if that's affected and you're not treating that, you're just treating testosterone, then you're not fixing the issue. That's just, again, masking a symptom. So the body's going to overcompensate, and it's going to overload your cortisol, your sympathetic nervous system, and you're going to be hypervigilant. You're going to be on edge. You're not going to be able to sleep. You're going to have adrenal fatigue, so you're going to have extreme highs, extreme lows. These are all things that we can now tie back up into right into the being deficient in these hormones.
As Andrew's talking, I can't help but think of a neighbor that actually committed suicide. He was in the Marines, and I remember vividly the first time he had his first break. My father, God rest his soul, who was also Marine, actually had to go into the house. He was alone in the house with a weapon. My father had to go into the house and actually yell at him like he was a drill sergeant to get him to snap back into reality and then go into treatment. And unfortunately, his story, like many others, is one where he ultimately ended up taking his life. And I can't help but think that, God, if we knew then what we know now,
right.
And how many people, talented people, imaginative people, bright people that we've lost.
Is it still 22 a day, Andrew?
Here's the thing. That's the numbers out, but it's actually
so much
higher.
more than that.
But here's why. They only can say it's a suicide if they leave a suicide note, a premeditated thing. Okay?
Wow.
So if somebody drives off a bridge, takes a massive overdose, does all these other things, and doesn't leave anything out, then they won't do it.
So it's likely much higher than that.
What we've heard estimated as at more like 40 a day.
God, which is
your mind. More than double the national average.
Could you imagine if it was 40 children a day? What we'd be saying in the news?
Right.
Could you imagine if we were saying it was 40 women a day? What would we be saying in the news?
Well, you have to think.
Why isn't this reported on more?
You have to think about the second and the third order effects of that veteran, that service member committing suicide. The wife, the family, second, third generation problems. We've had enough.
Right.
We have an answer. We have a solution. It's cost effective. We can treat them anywhere without having to go to the VA and give them world-class care with one of the top doctors in the field, endocrinology.
So let me ask you, why has the VA not adopted this yet? Is it bureaucracy and red tape?
Absolutely.
That's what I mean. Obviously, yeah.
Think about this, Shaun. I was on 13 medications. The generic cost of that a month was close to $3,000 a month.
You were a customer.
You know what, Shaun?
There's in somebody's good profit margin to take our guys off of all these medications.
There's two reasons too, and Chase and I got to get into in a second. Reason number one is it's bureaucratic red tape. Reason number two is it's not cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
It's not cookie cutter treatment, right?
Let's
Chase?
do it the same way.
Individualized, and it is a doctor that is doing what all doctors should be doing, which is let's figure out what the individual has and what their situation is first, and then treat that, pinpoint it. Instead of, hey, how do you feel? You feel this way? Okay, we'll give you this medication. That does nothing.
And when you talk about manipulating hormone therapies, you have to really gauge the person you're dealing with to find out what their levels are individually. So a doctor in a VA system, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, won't really have the discretion to go and do all this testing, which can be expensive, and then go through the follow-up of adjusting and maneuvering as the treatment progresses on?
They need proper training, and we have an answer for that. We can train.